Delivery boys of Reddit, what is the weirdest delivery you ever did? Delivered 30 pizzas to an Amish family. About a 35-minute drive. The entire family met me outside to grab a pizza. I took the rest in and followed them inside to their dining table. The elder of the family gestured to me to sit down with them, and he pointed to the one open seat. I realized that they saved me a seat to eat with them. I didn't know too much about the Amish back then, and I wasn't sure how rude it would be to say that in working, and couldn't/shouldn't. I was also thinking, on the other hand, they could have killed me. Remember, I wasn't an educated 16-year-old, so I sat down and ate 2 slices of pepperoni pizza with them. I found the girl across the table to be very attractive. They said a prayer of some sort and didn't talk much after that. Just asked my name and how thankful they were for me to drive all that way. I finally had to get back to work. They didn't tip, which was fine. I enjoyed the time with them. This was in 2005, I think, and it was for Pizza Hut in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Edit 2. The curiousness of how they ordered. I don't know about all families, but I saw a lot of Amish heads of households. Fathers typically carry cell phones for business purposes. Besides farming, a lot of families made furniture for the clothes displays in stores and at malls and such. They had huge barns to make furniture. They would have huge generators behind the buildings to run the equipment. They can't be connected to city power, and the generators couldn't run electricity for the house or lights, but the rules for the barn were different somehow. They aren't as disconnected as one may think. However, their house was completely standard by Amish terms. Still had to heat up the bath old fashioned. There were flies all over, no fans, etc. I didn't see how they kept food cold, if at all, during the summer. No washer/dryer. But the generators sure did help with their business practices, running tools and such. They also don't drive, but they have vans, and they would hire an Amish driver to take them to the city sometimes. The guy who answered the door looked like he had just seen a ghost and was a little jittery, so I'm pretty sure he was on some kind of drugs. Anyways, he hands me $10 for a $15 bill and tries to go back inside really quick. I realize that he didn't hand me enough money, so I knock on the door and tell the guy he still owes me like $5. So he starts patting his pockets and finally pulls his hand out as if to give me more money, but has nothing in his hand. He extended his hand to give me this imaginary money and was visually surprised when I wasn't fooled by his trickery. The guy does this 2 or 3 more times before having me call my manager to attempt to use his card to pay, even though I'm sure he knew it wouldn't work. At this point he goes back inside because he just heard his roommate come in and is going to borrow money from him. So I wait and I wait until I knock again. The guy cracks the door, sees it's me, and closes the door again really quick, like he was surprised I didn't go away. Eventually, after about 10 minutes of annoyance and feeling like I might get stabbed, I told the guy I either needed money or the food, which he reluctantly gave back. All in all, a very strange experience. This is definitely one of the most memorable deliveries I had when I worked as a driver for this Japanese restaurant. It was sent to this house with an order of a steak hibachi and a couple of sushi rolls that added up to something like $19.60. I like to call before I got to a place, just to give people a bit of a heads up, so by the time I got to the door it was already open. In the doorway stood a chubby kid, about 9 or 10 years old, that reminded me a lot of the kid from Bad Santa, but without the curly hair. I tell him the total as I pass off his food. He hands me a $20 bill, and with a straight face he smugly says, "Keep the change, pal." Immediately after, he closed the door, and I stood there for a second trying to process what just happened. When I got back to my car I noticed the time, and realized it was way too early for that kid to be home from school. I couldn't help but laugh at the whole situation. No wonder he sounded a bit cocky when he told me that I could keep the $0.40 in change. This kid probably faked being sick so he could stay from school and was probably in there watching TV or playing video games while eating sushi and feeling like a big shot. I know I'm old, but that age. This was in my first month of delivering pizzas. I pull up to a 4-plex, 2 floors, 2 apartments per floor, and knock on the correct door. After a minute an old scruffy Russian sounding guy answers the door and says how much. I told him the total and he walked off to get money. I look over to my right and can see the top of his wife's head poking over the back of a recliner. She is gabbing away with a friend on the phone going on and on. After a minute or two of listening to her wondering what is taking this guy so long, I hear a change jar being emptied on the counter. This guy seriously is about to pay me with all change and doesn't even have it counted. Shit. I sighed hard, but was thankful we were slow at the time, so I wouldn't really miss out on any money waiting for this guy. So here I am, listening to this old lady blabbing on, not understanding pretty much anything she is saying, while I can hear the old man scooting change around as he counts it. Finally, after a solid 5+ minutes of standing there, the man walks out and says something to his wife in a foreign language. She rotates the chair around so I can clearly see her, and there is no phone. I immediately stuck my head inside looking for a phone. I can see the table by the chair is empty and there is nothing in her hands, on her lap, on the floor. I looked everywhere for this phone. There wasn't one. She was literally talking to herself / the wall. I started going crazy in my head wondering what was going on. She starts talking to the air again and turns her chair back towards the wall. The guy goes and grabs the money and hands me a bag. It was filled with nickels and dimes. There was not one quarter or silver dollar or anything. I just looked at him, bewildered, then to her, mouth slightly agape wondering what was happening. Is 20 cents for you? I said nothing. I turned around with my bag of change and walked back to my car. The whole thing took about 15 minutes, most of which was spent with me standing in a wide open door in the middle of summer listening to a crazy old lady talk to the wall. When I got back to the store I plopped the bag of money down and explained what happened. My manager says you never know what to expect. Hell, a few months ago someone delivered to a born shoot and saw all the women walking around naked. I never found out if that was true or not, but I like to think it is. Mine is tame compared to these, but literally my first day doing deliveries. Punch the address into my phone and arrive as quickly as possible. Neighborhood is a bit shady, but I don't judge. Note on the door is really bad handwriting, but it says to knock because the doorbell is broken. Nothing unusual. Guy opens the door. Old scruffy skinny white guy. Says to come to the kitchen. That's where his cash is. At that moment I realized I shouldn't enter a stranger's house, but I didn't really have an excuse ready. Company policy says no or something. So next thing I know I'm in his living room. That's what it should be anyways, but it's full of retail clothing racks full of clothes and a couple mannequins. Needless to say I thought I was gonna be murdered, but we got to the dimly lit kitchen where the money and a cat were on the counter. He shuffles through the cash, pays me in exact change, and just takes the pizza to another room. So, I walked through the store to the front door, and left. Now I always have an excuse ready. I delivered pizza in New Jersey. I went on the porch to see a snarling Rottweiler behind the door. Not a big deal. It happens a lot. I'm a stranger. The dog is just being a dog. The lady pushes him back. We do the pizza transaction. And as I'm turning to go the lady said, "Oh my god, he's out." The back door was open and the dog was charging around the house about to come on the porch. I quickly opened the door to run inside, but the lady screamed no, the really bad one is inside, and I see a bigger Rottie just inside the hall, so I stick myself between the screen door and the real door, and I'm trapped in an angry dog sandwich. The outside dog bites my calf, because I can only close the screen door so much, not much damage but I'm bleeding. The manager goes to talk with the lady. It is like 1/8 of a mile from the store, or that lazy bastard wouldn't have bothered, and Rosses are penned up out back. As soon as the lady starts talking to him another small mutt dog zips out the door and bites him on the hand. He made the call on no more pizza for them. I delivered prescriptions for a pharmacy. It was a wild ride for a year of my life, let me tell you. The smelliest, most drug addicted, freaked out people you ever met, I dealt with on a daily basis. We also delivered medical supplies, like diabetic stuff, adult diapers, etc. This one particular delivery was a carton of adult diapers. The customer is on the top floor of a really seedy apartment building. I went up the scariest elevator in the world. There were roaches in the elevator, and every floor button was burnt with cigarettes. I get to the door, knock, Ballarat. I heard from inside. Again louder blare FHGHGGHGHGHGH. I've heard this language before. It pisses off obese person dialect. Great. I try the door. It's locked. Yelling and gurgling commencing from inside. So far, all this has happened to me before. Huge people routinely lock themselves in and cannot get up to get the door, so I have to go to the office to find someone to let me in. Back into Silent Hill the elevator to find the office. After about a half hour of searching for any humans or life forms, calling the boss repeatedly, a maintenance man approaches me all pissed off and sniffing. He's going to let me into the apartment to make the delivery. This is absolutely killing him to do this for me, and he lets me know how much of a nuisance I am. Okay, nice meeting you too, man. So we get up there again. He opens the door and swings it wide. The smell of a million sheets and bosses hits me. It is deafening. I nearly faint on the spot. I'm blinded by the smell for a few seconds, as now I can tell. A woman yells something incoherent at me. In the middle of the room is a circular purple velvet bed, and on this bed is the most huge monstrous woman you have ever seen. She is half covered with a dirty sheet, and I swear this is Medusa's obese sister, because I was petrified in place from her gaze. Surrounding her are 20 plus garbage cans overflowing with used diapers. She has 2 TVs on, both with the same show. I think it was Maury or something. I set her carton of diapers down right inside the door, not yet crossing the threshold into hell. She grumbles, put them closer. Damn it. I shudder and gag. I use my foot to push them further in. Okay, I'm out to here. Turn around to flee and look at my clipboard to see where to next. I need a faxing signature from her. I turn around. Oh, I need you to sign this receipt. I hold out my clipboard with the receipt on it, and it's obvious I'm going to have to enter and take it over to her. I slowly approach, avoiding any sheet stains or garbage can, and stretch out the clipboard to her. This is like trying to get Jabba the Hutt to sign something. She says I can't see that. Turn on the lamp, and point to a lamp in the corner, across the room. A pile of used diapers in between me and the lamp. No way I could reach it without moving diapers, or climbing over them. I have to leave now. I'm going to die. I don't want to die here. The room is spinning now. I'm going down. I'm a goner. I look at the clipboard with her receipt. I lied. Oh sorry, we don't actually need a signature. Thanks. And ran out. Got out of there. Back to my vehicle. I can smell the sheet and piss all over me. My clothes are done. My nose hairs are burnt with that smell. I was sick for the rest of the day. My boss was extremely pissed I didn't get the signature because he knew she would use that against us somehow to get free stuff delivered again. I refused to go back. In fact, about a month later I found another job. I apologize in advance for formatting. I'm mobile and I don't post often. This was a few years back, but still crazy to me. Pulling up the house was already a bit strange, since there were a lot of cars in the yard and neighboring yards, and I was only delivering one pizza. I assumed there was a party, and I was delivering to the chaperone or something. I was invited into the foyer by a lady, and I obliged. Normally we don't go in houses, but I remembered overhearing something about special instructions. The lady asked me if I would take the pizza into the basement. Alarms immediately went off in my head. I politely tried to get out of that request, stating we were busy and making excuses. She persisted, politely, and said she'd tip me better, which just reinforced the alarms. I again politely refuse, and she gets a sad look and says, oh, well, the kids will be disappointed. Being the sap that I am, I asked what exactly was going on downstairs. She told me there was a youth group, and I was just going to go downstairs to deliver a pizza to the speaker or something. I reluctantly agreed and headed into the basement. I was expecting maybe a dozen little kids, like 8 to 10-year-olds. I got downstairs and the place was packed with teenagers. Probably 20 to 30 kids down there, all chattering and stuff, evidently waiting for me. When they finally noticed me, the room exploded with energy and everyone started chanting pizza, pizza. Thoroughly confused. I make my way to a guy with a microphone. He asks me my name, and I tell him, and the crowd starts chanting my name. The guy informs me that I had just won the Pizza Olympics, hangs a medal around my neck with a pizza picture taped on it and a volleyball trophy that looked like the person was serving a little pizza box. Crowd goes bananas again. I'm utterly confused and make my way back upstairs as they keep cheering. The lady upstairs thanks me and I go back to the store, trophy and medal in hand. I still have the medal. The trophy got misplaced at the store sadly. Every time I tell the story, people think I was an absolute fool. I was, because it seemed like an obvious kidnap/rap trap. It wasn't, thankfully. Not sure I'll be able to top that one. Edit. Wow, this got a lot more attention than I expected. For those who've been looking for the medal, I'll try to unearth it. It's been a few years and I've rearranged stuff a few times. To those saying it was a first one, to get their wins type of deal, I thought that too, and it very well may have been the case. What makes me question that is that the order had been placed the day before to be delivered at a specific time. So, either I got there way ahead of the time, or any other shops they called failed miserably at making the time, or were given a different time, because I was there for a good 5 to 10 minutes from start to finish, including arriving and leaving, and saw no other delivery people. Again, not saying it definitely didn't happen that way, but just the way things unfolded, I would have expected to see another delivery driver either at the house, or pulling into the neighborhood as I was leaving. Anyway, I'm glad people seem to like this story. I'll do my best to locate the medal. I'm not a very organized person, though I don't know if the little pizza is still stuck to it at this point. While I actually am a delivery driver myself, the weirdest experience happened actually when I ordered food to my house. I live in a college section of Pittsburgh with 5 roommates, so it's safe to say the house is constantly gross. The same goes for our front porch, which is just littered in garbage. Well, my driver called me to tell me he was outside. He was outside on the curb walking up to me. My porch is wild and up to about hip height, so I'm peering over as I walk out of my front door to grab the food. In between the wall and I, there is this massive faking possum looking me dead in the eyes. The driver couldn't see. It was literally the first time I've seen one of these monsters, and I sheet my britches. I yelled, just put the food on the ground. Just don't come up here, as the last sliver of my masculine identity slivers out of me, sprinting back inside. Safely inside, peering out my window, I see the guy standing halfway up my staircase about 2 feet away from this gargantuan faking rodent, but his view was still obstructed. He's like, "Sir, do you not want your food?" And I scream from inside, "Yes, but don't come any further. I will come to you." I leap out the door, past the disease-ridden hairsack commandeering my porch, snag the bag from his hands, and leap back inside. From my perspective, the whole interaction was me just being a huge bussy about an animal, but from his perspective, I must have seemed like a next level crackhead or an acid trip gone wrong. I was delivering a mobile order for Papa John's, and it was really late. I was annoyed, because I wanted to take a double, to get more tips. When she answered the door, she was incredibly hot, and was only wearing panties and a jacket with no zipper. Horrible design flaw in my opinion. She had to hold it closed to not expose herself, and she seemed very confused. I said, "Hello Mrs. Name on order. Sorry about the wait. Here's your pizza." And that was when she said, "Oh, she's not supposed to be home for another 4 hours." She could tell that I was wondering why her roommate would order a pizza 4 hours early, and she said, "My girlfriend." Then another incredibly attractive woman sits up from the couch in the living room completely naked and stretches. Her girlfriend knew that she was cheating on her and ordered her and her mistress a pizza as a passive-aggressive way to show that she knew. I had to deliver that kind of poison. I had her sign her girlfriend's credit card receipt so that we could both be rid of that situation for the time being. Back in high school, I used to deliver pizza and was working Super Bowl Sunday. Towards the beginning of the evening, I got called to a house where there was clearly a viewing party. I rang the doorbell and their pit bull came running up to the door. I'm not really afraid of dogs, so I didn't think too much of it, but the first person to come to the door was a little girl super excited for the pizza. She ran up to the door and I could hear her dad yell, "Don't open the door, the dog will get out." But he yelled this right as she pulled ever so slightly down on the handle. From there the dog pushed through the rest of the way and I instinctively thought, oh no, I need to help them make sure the dog doesn't get out. Bad idea. The dog started attacking me, biting my hand first, and then my shoe, when I tried defending myself with my foot. Once the owner got to the door the dog took off, and he let me inside. I was then surrounded by a bunch of strangers at this viewing party who seemed shocked by what happened. My hand was bleeding, and out of shock I thought I might pass out. I guess the guys felt bad, so he gave me a $20 as a tip, and I got out as quickly as I could after that. But at least I didn't drop the pizza. Used to deliver medical equipment. I made a run out to serious cornfields and dirt roads bumfuck nowhere. The address turned out to be a house with a trailer grafted onto the backside in ain't no building inspectors round here fashion. The yard was full of garbage and some random animals were wandering around. The inside was a Texas chainsaw funhouse of unsafe living conditions. Despite being the middle of the summer, it was dark in there. All the windows had thick curtains, none of the lights worked, and every surface appeared to be covered with dust, mold, and general filth. A section of the ceiling was caved in from water leakage. There was hoarder trash everywhere, and you had to navigate the house by way of narrow tracks that reminded me of deer runs in the woods. The interior layout made no sense whatsoever. There were windows cut into the walls in odd places. The kitchen was buried in the middle of the house and appeared to have no exterior windows at all, and the patient's bedroom was through a doorway that opened directly into the kitchen. The bedroom was slightly cleaner and had a single window with the curtains open. The patient was an elderly mountain of adipose fat barely capable of moving under her own power. Side note, there are many more housebound morbidly obese people in America than you think. So she's gasping for air while I'm setting up the new oxygen machine and pushing cats out of the way. The whole time I'm looking out the window, dreaming of being anywhere except this southern gothic freak show. But then I see the final weirdness. This woman's husband, a good 300 pounds himself, is staggering aimlessly through the backyard, wearing nothing but a stained pair of tighty whities. He isn't actually doing anything, just taking a few steps, standing for a minute or two, taking another few steps, staring into the distance. He might literally have been blind. I finished what I was doing and noped out of there before their inbred son could make a Halloween mask out of my face. I deliver pizza in a smaller town and we often deliver to hotels. Well, after I had finished a delivery at a certain hotel near our pizza place I met a woman who became oddly excited when she saw me. She then proceeded to ask if I was going to be working for a bit longer. It was early in my shift after all, so it was a reasonable question. I also get asked quite a bit, so I answer yes and proceed on my way while not even thinking twice about it. I arrived back at the store and saw that the same hotel had placed an order. I'm halfway curious if it was the same lady I had spoken to, but thought it wasn't likely. So, I get to the room I was supposed to deliver to, and I have to knock for roughly 7 to 10 minutes and get nothing. As I'm about to leave I see the lady I had spoken to strolling down the hallway. She's a little different from the last time I saw her however. She looks a bit disheveled and stumbling a bit. Also, she had alerted me of her being there by shouting the whole way down the hallway at me. The things she was shouting about were 1. The cowboy hats on the floor. There were none, of course. 2. Wanting to fight me. 3. Wanting to fuck me. 4. About the hotel. Being mean to her, not the workers, the hotel itself. 5. How long it took me to get there. 6. How quickly I had gotten there. I know. 6 to 100. Some weird shit I quite frankly don't remember. The story doesn't end here however. She gets to her room and asks me if I have the key. I nicely say I don't, and she continues to yell at me about the previous subjects and then says she'll go talk to the front desk about getting a new key. She tells me to wait at the door to protect the room. At this point I'm looking around expecting a camera crew to come and tell me it was a prank or something, but this wouldn't be the case. So, after waiting about 5 minutes she strolls back up, doing the same routine as last time. She gets into her room and invites me in, which I politely decline. After all of this, she then tips me $30 on a very cheap ticket. I try to give it back to her because I feel like she may be onto something or something is wrong with her and I shouldn't be taking this. She won't take it back though, and I have to go back to the store with a look of shock on my face and a story to share with all of my coworkers. Then about a month later I get a delivery to the hotel across town and the name looks familiar. I can't really place it, but the name sticks out. I go to the room and it's the same lady. She's quiet, calm, nice, and acts completely normal. Everything goes normally, and I figure I have to be mistaken. I'm just remembering wrong, I figure. Then, as I'm about to close the door, she says, "Sorry, I can't tip you as much as last time." The door shuts, my jaw drops. I walk back to my car dumbfounded, and I begin to laugh my ass off until I go to my next delivery. Not a boy, but here's my delivery fuck up. I'm a florist. One summer at the shop I was first trained in, I was to deliver an arrangement to a woman on her 92nd birthday because the delivery person was on his lunch. I'm terrible at directions and finding places, so it took me 3 times longer than it should have to even find the house. Once I got there, I brought the arrangement to the door and rang the doorbell. The little old lady opened the door, to which I respectfully, I thought I was being helpful, opened the storm door to be able to pass her gift. Before I could even say, "Happy birthday," her morbidly obese chihuahua comes bolting through the open doors past me, running around the damn neighborhood. The lady screamed, "Oh, you let him out." Oh no. She was pissed. I was positive that letting that stupid dog out would give this decrepit woman a heart attack, so I went chasing after it. It took what was probably only 5 minutes to catch that obese creature, at least 10 lbs huge for a chihuahua, and bring it back to her house, but it felt like forever. I didn't even say anything to her. I closed the storm door and left, humiliated, about to have an anxiety attack. To this day I don't do deliveries. Delivery drive for Order Up, so mostly high college students. Nothing super crazy, just a handful of interesting ones. Delivered to a dude who invited me in to smoke, declined given I had to keep driving. Like 40 minutes later I got a delivery from the same dude, or like one drink from McDonald's, got the same invitation. Got kind of creeped out given it seemed more than coincidental. Delivered to a girl who hit on me, asked me when I got off, and what I was doing later. No, I did not end up giving her extra sausage. One delivery was so fucking disgusting I almost puked. Delivered to an international student. He didn't answer when he knocked, but he yelled "come in," so I opened it and walked in. Apartment was absolutely littered with empty and half-eaten food containers, drinks, cigarette butts, and other various filth, and smelled like rotting food. Dude was playing League and told me to leave it on the table. Slapped that down and got out of there fast. I deliver to a guy who has 6 to 8 cats in a small house pretty regularly. Nice guy, seems pretty lonely. I swear I see more cats there every time I show up. Often I deliver to a lot of really wealthy neighborhoods, straight up built in the last few years, gated communities, lots of solar panels on the roofs, massive houses. Really unnerving because I feel like I'm too poor to even be allowed in there. Annoying because often they don't tip well though. Other than that it's mostly high students or international students delivering, since it's a bit of a pricey delivery app. This will probably get buried, but oh well, here it goes. I took a delivery once where this middle-aged man opened the door and invited me inside, and as I walked in I could see quite a few 40 to 50-year-old people sitting around the dinner table. The man at the door told me to walk into the dining room and say, "Did someone order a pizza?" To everyone in there. I was a bit confused because obviously they did order a pizza, but whatever, I did it. As I finished asking the question, this other man came up and started just going off on me. The dude was threatening me and telling me that I was messing with the wrong guy. At this point I was terrified for my life, looking around the room for help, but everyone else's face was stone cold. Eventually, after about a minute of this guy yelling at me, everyone started laughing hysterically. It turns out that this group of people had just performed a play and they were having their post-performance celebration. In this play, someone walks up and says that line, "Did someone order a pizza?" And the man was just reciting his lines to me. They ended up being really nice people and tipped me like $15, but man, I was sheeting buckets for a few minutes there. I used to deliver pizza when I was in high school. One day, I pulled up to a very large multi-million-dollar home with a large steel-gated entryway. I buzzed the intercom thingy, and some grouchy woman came on and said to use the walk-in entrance because she wasn't opening the car gate for me. The driveway beyond the gate is like 2 football fields long, and I've got 4 pizzas to carry. I'm already pretty annoyed at this point. I finally get to the front door. The inner door is open, but the glass outer door is not. I hear ferocious barking, and a faking wolf dog comes flying around the corner of the inside of the house. This thing must be like 150 pounds of pure muscle. It legit looks like an actual wolf. It runs full speed into what must have been the strongest glass ever crafted by humans, and then proceeds to continue its ferocious barking while jumping up and down clawing at the glass door. A minute later, a woman who is about as tall as Danny DeVito and likely around 300 pounds wanders around the corner and yells, "You're just gonna stand there while he does that?" I look around, completely baffled, wondering what I, the faking pizza guy, am supposed to do other than sit at someone's front door. She opens the door, rips the pizzas out of my hand, literally throws $60 at me, and slams the door in my face. The order total was $59 and change. I stood there for a moment, entirely confused by what had just happened, and turned around to make the trek back up her gigantic driveway. Halfway up the driveway, I kid you not, I get stung by a bee. I told my boss I was never delivering to that house again. He was cool about it and said we wouldn't take orders from that address anymore. Fuck that lady. Kind of sad, but also quite unpleasant. Had a delivery to a nursing/rehabilitation center to a room that ordered pretty frequently. I remember it vividly. It was for 2 20-ounce cokes. I had delivered there plenty of times before, and I knew the guy was morbidly obese to the point of not being able to get out of bed. Anyways, I get to his door and knock like usual, and I hear a female voice mumble something. I knock again, more mumbling. Figuring if it was something serious they'd make it clear, I opened the door. The image of him lying stark naked on his back will forever be burned into my memory. A scent of ammonia and death assaulted my nostrils as the woman who had been mumbling now clearly says patient care. I hurriedly clarified that I had a delivery for him and waited outside, secretly hoping I never had to deliver to him again. The weird thing is, after that incident, every time he would order he would specifically ask for me to take it in the special instructions. Luckily our store policy doesn't work like that, and I flat out refused anyways. Apparently a different driver took one of the ones I was supposed to take and walked in on him naked again. Sad part is he stopped ordering all of a sudden, and I think my general manager said he had passed away. As most on here, I was a pizza delivery guy. I go to this guy's door. I noticed out of the corner of my eye he was peeking through the blind folds of the window next to the door. I wave at him, making myself seem friendly. We exchange pleasantries. I hand him his pizza, breadsticks and liter of Pepsi. His tone and facial expression then drastically change. He begins raising his voice and getting red-faced as he says he didn't order breadsticks, that he ordered chicken wings, and that he ordered Mount Dew and not Pepsi. I show him the receipt, and he denies that he didn't order this stuff. I try to keep my composure and say I'll drive back to get the right stuff. After about a minute of him yelling and saying he won't order from us again, he switches back to the smile he originally had and says, "I'm only messing with you, man. This is all correct." I take a sigh of relief and pity laugh at his prank. He then throws his arm around my shoulder and points with his other hand to the upper corner of his patio, saying it's a prank show. There's the camera. I look up looking for a camera, and he says, "Damn, got you again. You're an easy one." And he laughs, hands me the change and tip, and closes the door in my face. And I'm just standing there wondering what just happened these past 5 minutes. At my job we aren't allowed to enter our clients' residences. It usually pisses people off, but there are some understanding people too. However, there are a few cases of just absurdity. The first time I entered a client's house, wasn't aware of the policy yet, and the client asked me to go grocery shopping for her. I told her I unfortunately could not do that, and she said she'd tip me $20, and it would be our little secret. I reaffirmed that I could not, and was tracked through several devices, and she got extremely sad, and tried to offer me water in order to bribe me still. The other time the lady opened the door and was inches away from me. She asked me to come inside and I told her that I was not able to. She kept yelling at me to come in. I kept my composure but told her I could not. Keep in mind she was right in front of me. She could have just grabbed her stuff from me and been done with it. Nope. She slammed the door in my face, then called my manager to tell them how rude I was and how I should be reprimanded. Oh, and once I delivered to someone but thought I had the wrong address. I confirmed his address with him and he freaked the fuck out. Started swearing at me, slammed the door in my face, and called my manager and told them I was extremely rude and he was positive at me and 2 other individuals were stalking him and beating him up when he was in the hospital the prior weekend. I used to deliver for a pizza/wing joint in a really seedy small city. We got an order for a bunch of wings from one of our regulars. The guy calls like every other day and orders the same exact meal. I was fairly new to driving there, and even though he always called, I had never taken his order. His house ends up being on the east side, which is kind of like the worst of the worst. There are only like 4 houses on his street, separated by empty lots full of metal and a couple fenced in yards. I get up to the door and knock. No answer. A guy across the street walks out with 2 big dogs and starts yelling that he's gonna rob me. It's the middle of the day and he was just being a crazy hick, so I kept an eye on him and knocked again. Finally the door flies open and this skinny old man comes on the porch. He steps out to tell his neighbor to fuck off, leaving the door wide open. Point behind him hanging literally all over his house is freshly harvested, sheety looking pot plants, like he had to navigate through a forest just to move though his living room. The guy doesn't even bat an eye, like it's perfectly normal to have 60 plants hanging from a string in your living room. Got my money, no tip, and left before the neighbor decided to make good on his hatchery. I definitely saw a lot of weird people on those routes, but that one really stuck out. I was a pizza delivery guy for 3 years and I will never forget this one delivery I went on. We delivered pretty regularly, like 4 to 5 times a week, to this guy who was very clearly a drug dealer. He had offered many of us weed many times and his house stunk something fierce. He would order under different names depending on how high he was at the time. I wish I remembered the names because they were hilarious. One slow night in March, his most high alter ego calls in an order and I'm the lucky delivery guy. I was stoked because he always tipped great, foreshadowing. I get to his door and he is the most drugged up I've ever seen. I went to give him his pizzas and he refused to take them. Instead he begged me to come inside and help him with something. Once inside he made me watch as he gave his Christmas tree, which he had miraculously kept alive for 4 months, acid because the tree needed to get high too. At this point he lets me finish my delivery. He gives me the money to pay for the pizzas and then hands me a sandwich bag full of ones. I mean stuffed to the brim. He says, "Cody, my name is Zach and it clearly says it on my name tag. You are my favorite pizza man. Have a great night." I tell him it's too much but he insists. I then thank him and head back to the store. At the store I talk to my buddy who's the manager about it and we start talking about how weird that guy is. After a while, when it's just us in the store, I dump out my tip bag on a table to count. As the money falls something else lands on the table. It's a tiny baggie with a small dirty looking crystal rock. He had tipped me in meth. My manager and I started freaking out that I've been driving around with meth for so long. We decided it was best to just flush it and never talk about it to our store manager. The guy never ordered again after that, and I never got a tip worth more money than that. I delivered it to a party. No answer on the door, so I went round to the yard. Bonfire going, and, of course, a stripper. Now keep in mind I'm a gay man and this was a very busty lady. She hugs me, shirtless, and I nervously look around for the person paying. I manage to find him and get the money, but before I can leave they ask her to bend over, and she bends down in front of me, showing me the only vagina I have ever seen. It wasn't pretty. Then, I think they figured out I was gay. The guy in a bikini, whose balls were unrestrained, tried to hug me. Another party, another stripper fully nude. This time during the day, and at the front door, no pun intended. She answers the door and all these guys are crowded behind her. She was sweet enough, but the guys were rowdy and filming me and asked me if I'd like to do a funnel between her legs. I politely decline and they ask me what I want to do to her. Quietly says nothing, and a dude whispers to me fuck her right in the bussy, so I repeat it, and the guys go wild and I leave. I delivered it to this old man's house, and as I passed him the pen to sign the receipt he dropped it. I go down to pick it up and instead of standing back up I just look up from my crouch position. As my gaze drifted upward I noticed his fly was undone, and then I saw his huge grin. I shot up and handed the pen over. As I'm leaving he goes, "You can come back after your shift if you want to," which I replied nope, thanks, and bolt back to my car. I used to be a paperboy for a local newspaper. I was maybe 10 at the time in the early 1990s. One house I delivered to had an adult son that was still living at home. He had this custom S10 pickup. He had chrome wheels and a custom paint job. I thought it was cool. I went up the driveway on the driver's side and came back down on the passenger side. I continued on my route. On the way home the guy is waiting by the mailbox. He runs out into the middle of the street and grabs my bike and pulls me on the bike into his driveway. He's pointing at his truck and asking me why I walked around his truck the way I did. I was scared to death. I had never been so scared in my life. All I could muster out was, "I don't know. I like your truck." He didn't believe me. He starts pointing his finger in my face and cussing me out. I pissed myself. I was so scared. I was wearing dark black jean shorts and you couldn't see what I had done. I was so scared and embarrassed. I was a quarter mile away from my house. He let me go and told me to never walk around his truck like that again. I can still see his face, his buzz cut, and white wife beater. I never told my parents, or anyone for that matter. Part of me thought I was going to die. The other part of me was afraid someone would see my bus-soaked shorts. The family moved away a few years later. I remember being in high school and still seeing that truck as I drove by the house in my first car. The years were not kind to it. The paint started to fade, and it was out of style. Mini trucks were replaced by full-sized pickups with extended cabs. I learned the ways of the world and came to peace with it. This was some 20-something loser's prized possession. This was his pride and joy. It was out of style, and so was he. I feel as though there was a substance abuse problem. Part of me hopes he got the help he needed, but I'm petty. The other part of me imagines he odd in that truck. Who does that to a child? Delivered Jimmy John's to a hotel once. As I walk in the entrance a woman who's crying and standing outside on the phone hangs up and walks alongside me to the elevator and we get in together. She says men are so terrible. My husband has been having an affair. I nod and give her my condolences. Then as I get to my floor and the door opens I awkwardly tell her I believe everything will work out in the end for you, but I'm sorry this happened. And she begins to hug me and then we part ways. Then I get to the door and a really big guy answers and tells me to come in. Policy is to not go inside the customer's house, but it was my last delivery of the night on Valentine's Day, and it was a hotel room, so what the hell. I go in, and we start small talking while he pays me. He and his wife are visiting the casinos and ask what my favorite casino in Oklahoma was. I was 19, but I didn't ever go to any casinos, so I just said I was 17, so I had no clue. Then his equally large wife walks out of the bathroom in nothing but a towel, and she thanks me. He has paid me at this point and I don't like this situation, so I end the small talk and open the door to leave. He grabs my shoulder, his wife at his side, and says to hold on for my tip. He hands me $25 and I'm so excited. I thank him, and he says here's something extra, and immediately pulls off his wife's towel. They both start laughing, and I could feel my face turn mega red, and I turn away and yell out, "You both have a great night." And then I practically ran to the elevator. Best tip I ever got. Been a delivery guy at an Italian deli in the Pacific Palisades, rich area, for a few years. Nothing crazy happens usually, it's a quiet place. I wouldn't call this at all crazy, but it caught me a bit off guard. So I had a delivery to one of the richer neighborhoods in the area and had to check in at the guard gate kiosk to be let in. The houses in this area are all massive, some with long driveways. Porsches of all kinds, more Model S and X's than the Tesla warehouse, Mercedes SLS's etc. My delivery house was a large all-white mansion, and when I rang the doorbell I was greeted by a little boy and girl, both roughly 5. What was odd was the fact both weren't wearing much other than a towel. In fact, I recall the little girl being nude completely. This shocked me, but I didn't react visually and kept it professional. They called for the dad to come, and to no one's shock also greeted me wearing only a towel around his waist. Clearly they had all taken a family shower just now. He of course didn't comment on any of that, as if a little naked 5-year-old answering the door to a stranger delivery man wasn't peculiar. When they paid, and I started to walk back to my car, the 2 naked kids even ran in the front yard barely wearing towels, and ran around for a minute, until their nanny called them back in. Rich people. Okay, late to the thread, but I'll post this anyway. So by far the weirdest delivery I ever made was to this house with a glass entryway. You could see inside really well, even at night. So I go up, knock a few times, the usual. I hear a voice from inside the house, the room next to the front door. 1 second. He calls. So I wait for about 30 more seconds then proceed to knock again. No answer. Another 30 seconds and another knock. Dad, I hear from the inside. So clearly this kid can hear me, and he's clearly set on not opening the door for me. I've been at the doorstep for about 2 minutes, and I'm a little annoyed, but it's whatever. It's my last delivery and the longer I'm out the less cleaning I do in store. More waiting, more knocking. Another minute passes, and after probably the 5th or 6th time knocking, this kid, probably my age, comes running out of the office. In only his boxers. He runs through the main area of the house, still hasn't opened the door, but again it's all glass. Gives me the universal hand sign for 1 second, and disappears to the other side of the house. He's gone for about a minute, and then reappears with the cash in hand, but a different pair of boxers on. Opened the door, paid for the pizza, and sent me on my way. No apology, no mention of the boxers, nothing at all. By far the weirdest delivery I was ever on. Tipped $5 though, 10/10ths would deliver again. Buckle up, this is a long one. I was a delivery driver for a sandwich shop during my last year of college during homecoming weekend. We were totally swamped with orders and we literally had to dodge people in the streets during delivery runs. I had only been on the job for a couple months, so I didn't quite have the house numbers down on some of the more oddly numbered streets, and had some trouble finding who ordered. While walking around asking party goers in the street who ordered, I pause when I hear my car door close. Someone had gotten in the passenger seat of my car. This drunk chick, call her Vicky, is sitting there and just waves her hand and says just take me home. We had several extra drivers today for the rush and some drivers had done this before, so why not? I convinced Vicky to allow me to finish delivering, and I take her to her apartment halfway across campus. On our way she's drunk babbling and finds an unopened bag of Fritos in my backseat. Doesn't ask, just tears into them, grabbing handfuls of fritters and, well, I can only describe it as mashing them at her mouth regardless of my protest. Fritos everywhere. Gets halfway through the bag and tosses it back to the backseat. Drunches are weird. We get to Vicky's place and she's a mess. Locked out of her apartment. No keys, no phone, no wallet, and she's convinced she dropped them in my car. Starts searching. I'm asking if she has a neighbor that can take her in for now, and she's getting the vibe I'm about to ditch her there with nothing. She convinces me, poor girl, to take her back to the house all her stuff is at, where I picked her up. Continued drunk babble that amounts to essentially a story about her friends not liking her and ditching her. So now I feel worse about my plan to ditch her where I got her. Got to the house, and she knows if she gets out of the car I'm gone. Starts yelling out the window at people to find the guy that was holding her stuff. One of my shift managers drives by, delivering for the $$$ homecoming brings, and sees this hammered chick in my car and flips me the bird. I think I'm screwed now. I convince Vicky to get out and look for the guy as that's the only way she's going to find him. I bolt as soon as she turns her back to the car. Turns out my shift manager wasn't actually upset with me and was just giving me shit. I thought it was hilarious. Woo. End of story. Flash forward about 2 months and I see Vicky working at a rival sandwich place. Wait for recognition to dawn on her at the sight of me. None. Wow. She was really drunk. I decided to let it go. Again. Poor girl. Flash forward another 3 months and I get a delivery to Vicky at a friend's place. What are the odds? And she actually answers the door to sign the receipt. I couldn't just let it go now. I ask her, so, do you remember homecoming? This look of absolute dread comes over her face, so I assume she didn't remember anything from that day. I start recounting some of the details, and she signs the receipt as fast as she can, and closes the door to the sounds of uproarious laughter from her friend behind her. My friend, who once worked as a pizza delivery driver in our small town, had a good night once. Get the order, 25 pizzas. Address leads to a near dead end road in the middle of the night. I'm a grown faking man. He was 21 at the time of mention, about 6 foot and black as the night itself, and just healing from a broken foot. I figured I'm dead. So I'm off, dreading what's going to happen. Is it a prank? A party? But why this late? It's loud screaming, yelling inside. It's 2:30 AM on a Saturday morning, the last run of the night, and the only one who knows where I'm at is the manager who doesn't even have my cell number. Get there. This huge, nearly a head taller than me, guy answers the door. Pizza? He cries out. He yanks me and I'm sweating inside and he yells. The pizza man has arrived. It's a frat party. He demanded they each hand me a $5 for the night. They also attempt to pry me with obviously alcoholic drinks. 3 cute cheerleaders pat my fro and tell me I'm a fuzzy man with love food, and a few guys actually offered to help lead me back to the main road. Obviously not drunk, but very kind guys all the same. I made, geez, nearly 500 that night. Some tipped 5. Some were very happy to get pizza and gave me a chill 20. But lem tell ya, I had no idea what to expect that night. Worked as a courier in Seattle delivering lost luggage. Sometimes I would deliver luggage that had been lost for 2 years, faking airlines, and they were relieved to get their vacation pictures back, pre-smartphone days. This is not one of those types of deliveries. Beguiling a heavy bag about the size of a loaf of bread. Black, nothing on it, just zippers. I delivered it to this guy somewhere I forgot about 20 minutes north of the airport. We call everyone when their bag arrives for sorting each route, then we call again when we leave with it. He in a very forceful and cop-like manner says he needs a call right before I get there so he can meet me at my car. I get there, just some neighborhood. I pull up in dude's driveway. He is waiting on the tailgate of his truck. Looks like a goddamned Viking 6'3" big beard, easily 220 solid muscle, moves like a predator. I get out of the car. I hand him the bag. He asks me to put it on his tailgate. I put it down. He opens it and it pretty much contains a murder kit. 2 HK-45s, 1 folding knife, 1 fixed blade combat knife, a bunch of those zip ties cops use for riots, a set of mechanics gloves, a few sets of black rubber/latex gloves, and a few trash bags and rolls of gaffer tape. He pulls the gun out and loads them and loads everything to see if it's all there, else says thanks, signs the paperwork that it's all there, and that's it. This was late 2005, early 2006 or so. Strangest. Long time ago, but during high school I would occasionally have to make a delivery for the Papa John's. I made pizzas at part-time. I took a delivery to the worst project in the city. We had problems at this place before, so I carried no money and we only took it as a credit card delivery. When I got out of the car, a man came up and said, "Give me the pizza." I was about 10 feet away and noticed a knife in his hand. I opened the pizza and threw it at him while it was hot. Since I was halfway out of the vehicle, I was able to jump in and hightail it out of there. We called the customer and they were very upset that no pizza was coming. We did return their credit card, but never delivered there again. About 6 months later the project burned down. A possible sad story was a very large man, maybe 400 pounds, ordered 2 meat lovers pizzas with double meat and triple cheese about every other day. He always tipped extremely well. He was the only person at home when we delivered. At one point he stopped ordering. We assumed he had passed away. You just can't live eating like that in your 50s and be 400 lbs. Very nice person. I like to think he didn't die and lost 200 lbs. I've posted this in other places, but here goes. I call it the night of the revenge pizzas. It was about 2 weeks after I started working there. It was 91. I had just been discharged from the Navy, and I took the job at Pizza Hut because it allowed me to go to school during the day, my first attempt at a degree, and make some cash for books, gas, and other stuff at night. There was an assistant manager, Dave, who had just been fired for the absolute dumbest reason ever. He hit on one of the phone girls, who told him to bite my ass, so he did, while the store manager was standing right there. It was the fastest firing for sexual harassment in the history of the galaxy, I'll wager. There was the phone girl, Debbie, who called in sick. She was known to have a crush on Dave. Why would she date someone who was into biting ass? Final piece of this story, the bitten phone girl, Sally. It's a Friday, which means the 5 drivers that are all on the road near constantly. If I was at the shop for more than a minute, I'll eat this laptop, preferably with pepperoni, bacon and beef. I got a delivery for the Best Western about a mile away. To large cheese lovers, an easy drive should get me a decent $1 tip. Add those up in those days, and it was great money. I get the pizzas and go. I get to the room, knock, and Dave answers the door in his boxers. What? He bellows at me. Pizza Hut, I say calmly. I have your pizzas. From the back of the room, I hear, Dave. What's going on? It's clearly Debbie, who is decidedly not sick, unless wearing a bedsheet and nothing else is considered sick, as in not well sick. Screwing in as better sick isn't justification to actually call in sick, if I remember the employee's handbook correctly. Wrong room, he says. But, I start to say, but the door is slammed in my face. And so, pizzas in hand, with no tip, I drive back to the shop. When the manager hears what happened, including the occupants of the room, which I let slip because I was frustrated, Debbie no longer works for us. But, there's still the mystery of the order. Sally insists that she got the right room number. The manager gives her a verbal warning and lets it drop. But when I look at Sally, who looks less like she got yelled at and more like a subtle piece of revenge was had, I suddenly realized that she knew a game of Debbie Does Dave was happening in the hotel room. Somehow, some way, she knew the new guy, me, would tell everyone who was there, and that I was never going to piss her off, ever. We ate the revenge pizzas between deliveries that night, so there was at least one bright spot to the failed delivery. I am a one-time delivery boy. I just turned 17 and a female friend of mine asked me to do a delivery just 200 meters away from their restaurant because her husband was off to shop for the next day. I asked her, why is she not delivering herself? She stopped doing what she was doing at the moment. She looked at me deeply in my eyes for a couple of seconds, began to smile and said, you'll see why. Since I knew her and her husband well, I said okay. Sure, I'll do. They gave me so often food for free. Of course I'll do it. Without hesitating, she grabbed a big bag behind the bar, which was a lot of Greek food, already done, and gave it to me. Cool. I said to myself. Hey, I'm a delivery boy now. The sun was shining, and it was a very clear noon with a great blue sky. I walked happily along the street, and took a deep breath, before I entered the backyard of the address, which was some kind of an industrial complex. I walked till the end, around the corner, and shit started to become strange. There were 3 steps that led to a strange door, which looked like some kind of thick security door. But before that door there was some space which was caged. You know, like a real big white metal bird cage. I started to feel uncomfortable, since there was no bell anywhere to find. Still searching, the cage door opens automatically, and a man's voice whispers loudly, but with some aggression, step in. I did 2 steps, and I was standing in that cage. I began to be nervous when I saw the camera in that cage, which was not visible from the outside. By completing my last thought, the strange voice ordered me to close that cage door behind me. My first thought was, okay, Stella, the restaurant girl, I cannot disappoint her. The cage door closed, and I was waiting. Trapped like a chicken when producing her eggs. The voice asked in a more aggressive manner, what the fuck do you small beach want here? At that moment, I felt that this voice must belong to a 3-meter bodybuilding giant. I've swallowed my dry spit, and then replied, I have food. The big security door opens, and through the darker 8-meter tall bodybuilder with only one eye looks at me, slowly from top to bottom, and back to my eyes. I only thought, fuck the hell. What has he been into, for losing an eye? I want to be out of here. I'll pay for them instead, fuck it. But the cage was closed and secured. The only way was forward, into the darkness, and a strange smelling building, in a faking backyard. What the fuck are you doing? I screamed into my thoughts, while trying to smile. That guy was really certain that he was faking up my mind. He began to smile really sick and said, go in. Go. Through those thick curtains. Okay, I'm dead now. Just accept it. No problem. You had 17 years. Should be enough now. I walked in, pushed the black curtains aside, and I stepped into a really nice looking red room. Empty, except a bar on the left, and behind was standing a mature but old woman, smoking a cigarette. She turned her head towards me. Then I was able to see her ugly sweat on her face. That was the moment I realized that it was really warm in here. She looked at me, and I looked at her, trying not to notice the cigarette which already had a wet filter from her sweat. Food. It struck me like lightning. Tell her you have good food. In the moment I was opening my mouth to say food, a loud female voice interrupted me by almost screaming the word food. I turned my head into that direction. Oh yeah. 2 other females were shouting. And then it happens. 3 completely naked women with such great bodies and much greater beauty were walking towards me. Time was passing really slowly. Those beauties arrived in front of me, and I was able to smell them. Immediately a really great sweet feeling went through the muscles of my dick and all the horror turned into a wet fantasy. The girls took away the bag and the food from my hands. And now with free hands, I didn't know where to put them. I was only able to see their soft skin and I really had a hard time not to touch it. Damn, it looked so soft. The breasts, the legs. Oh my god. They all had such beautiful intimate haircuts. I was pulled from that 2-second dream. From the ugly woman behind the bar. She said, we charge people who are looking, like you are looking. The 3 girls smiled, and they gave me a kiss on my cheeks. They were now very happy with their food. The old witch looked at me. She paid me, and said bye very slowly, smiling. I turned away, and left the building noticing the one-eye bodyguard at the door smiling at me. All the doors closed behind me. Before I went back to deliver the money, I laid down on the grass observing the wonderful sky. Later on, the friend told me that this building is an illegal brothel and I've only seen very few of it. But on that day, I fell in love with the darkness. I had a naked hooker, well worn, think crack hoe, try to trade my pizza bag, best one in the store, for sexual favors. I was young, and probably had a deer in the headlights look on my face. There were 2 gentlemen behind her in the motel room laughing their ass off. Then she kept asking for a certain change back, and then kept changing her mind on how she wanted it, and naively embarrassed me was going along with it, until I realized she was scamming me. She only managed to get $5 from me. All in all, it's my favorite go-to story from my delivery days, so I guess it was kinda worth the $5. Then there was the old couple, that when they opened the door a fog rolled out from them hotboxing the crap out of cigarettes. The woman would insist that I come in, because it's cold out, it was summer. Then she would take the pizza and grab her purse to get the cash, while launching into a rant about them being broken. Meanwhile the guy would try to slip a tip into my hand, but then she would see it, and grab it out of my hand, and yell at him, and he would slink away mumbling to himself. She always paid in exact change, then handed me what she called a coupon. It was always an ad torn out of the phone book, and sent me on my way. They ordered every Monday night for probably the entire summer, and I'd always walk away smelling like a damn cigarette with a piece of a phone book. A couple of the more notable ads I remember were for a roofing company, lived with parents, so I didn't even own a roof, and bulk rock salt. Again, it was in the middle of summer. Another one was a lady that ordered enough pizza, salad, and pop for the entire week for herself. She was an old woman that always had a younger guy, not always the same guy, but they were all seemingly in their 40s. We had theories that they were sugar daddies for an older woman. I'm not sure, but they definitely weren't her sons. She once ordered 2 liters. Her weekly order was always around $70. One week she threw a fit and made us remake every pizza because she claimed they were burnt. They weren't, and that day was awesome because everyone in the shop got a free pizza. One time she demanded to pay with a check and my manager opted because fuck it, it'll make her happy. Well, she made a huge deal about putting it in an envelope so I wouldn't lose it and was very condescending about it. So dumb young me shoved the entire thing in my cargo pocket. After delivering a few more I realized I had dropped the check somewhere. So my manager says to retrace my steps to find it, and he will call the old lady and see if she will cancel that check and write another one. So the first place I go to is the previous delivery at the CD motel, previously mentioned but different day, and sure enough I see the envelope torn open with no check inside. So I took the empty envelope back, and my manager said that she lost her sheet and thinks we are trying to scam her. But got her to agree that if in a week it wasn't cashed then she would go ahead and cancel it and rewrite one for us. We were hopeful that any place that cashed checks would see that it's made out to pizza place and not accept it. Well, according to her it was cashed. And because I was under the table and young and stupid I had to work for free for a night and a half to make up for it. I know it's illegal and the pizza places are assholes yada yada. On the plus side she no longer trusted us and stopped ordering from us. This last one is more upbeat. There was a guy that would order every Wednesday night at the same time with the same pizza. He was a super nice guy that was disabled and living on a fixed income. Unfortunately he has the nickname at the store as Mr. PP Pants because he was mostly bedridden and his house smelled. But I didn't mind because he was always courteous and struck up a good conversation. He couldn't tip but loved pizza and Wednesday night was his chance to treat himself a bit because of our half off Wednesday coupon. His health was always on the decline, but he was religious with his order every Wednesday. A few times he would have to miss because of being admitted to the hospital, and it happened more frequently as time went on. Then he stopped ordering altogether. I always hoped that maybe he went to a nursing home, but it's more likely that he passed away. I know I could have probably looked him up, but I never did. Wednesdays weren't the same after that. So I had to deliver and set up some computer gear for a guy. Pull up to the apartment, his daughter answers the door in the shortest shorts and a see-through shirt. She says dad will be right out if you wanna watch TV, and I'm like yeah for sure. She's sitting real close to me. Dad walks out, super rough looking dude 45 to 50. Says you can set this up in the office, and he walks me to his bedroom. Mattress on the floor, cinder block table, alarm clock, and a bat with nails sticking out the end of it. This bat had been used on someone / something. He says go ahead and set it up in the office. So I sit down and start setting it up. He points to the closet, which is a standard apartment closet, maybe 2 feet deep and 5 feet wide. Oh, and 2 milk crates to sit on. This bat is about 10 inches from me, and he's right behind me. I set up his computer, and he trades me places, and says you can see yourself out. Thanks for the setup. Then proceeds to slide the closet door shut with him in there. I walk out, a girl grabs me, and throws me on the couch. I ask her for a pop, and she stands up, and starts walking towards the kitchen. I stare at her as for 10 seconds, then nope the hell out of there. She chased me to the parking lot, and I was gone. I delivered pizza all through high school, and sometimes on summer break in college. One regular didn't want anyone to meet her, so she would open her garage door, and put the money on a side table inside the garage. You took the money, and left the pizza. Just as you were about out of the garage she would start to close the door, so you had to hustle a bit. None of us ever saw what she looked like. One older guy ordered a small cheese pizza. I show up at his apartment, and he takes the pizza and literally tosses the box onto the floor into the corner. He tells me he just needs help getting his couch into his truck and he'll tip. So I helped him, and got a nice tip. One pose answers the door and he and his buddies are having a poker party. The total is about $62 and they are all pitching in, and decide to give $80, and one guy says to let the driver have the rest as the tip. The pose starts walking back to the door with the money and pockets most of the tip, and gives me $65. One kid was probably 13 and home alone and ordered. Apparently his parents don't trust him, so they lock the wrought iron gate to the front door. He tells me not to worry, just push the box through the bars sideways. As I'm doing this, I hear the pizza collapse in the box and he just keeps telling me not to worry. And of course, if you've ever delivered pizza, you know that some people send their kids to the door, since kids don't know about tipping. I'm gonna apologize for the run-on sentences and crap like that in advance. But this is my story. On my first day of delivering Chinese food, I pull up to this big house that's split up into I think about 4 or 5 different apartments. There's a fire truck pulling up to the front of it, no sirens or lights on, and a cop hanging on the back of it with a fire axe in his other hand. And in my brain I'm like, oh shit, what's going on? So I just pull up behind them, and the cop yells, you can't pull up here. And I respond saying, I've got a delivery here, where am I supposed to go? And he says, I dunno, just pull in the back. So to the back I go. I park and I'm looking around back for apartment B, or whatever, carrying the food in the normal brown paper bag, hoping it's not around front. Can't find it. So I'm walking up towards the front, and on the sidewalk going towards the house is another cop walking up, and he's got a freaking automatic rifle style rifle, and now I'm freaking the fuck out. And he sees me, and starts yelling to me asking what I'm doing here. And I tell him that I have a Chinese food delivery here. He says, no shit, what's the address? And I tell him the address and app number. And he goes, you gotta be fucking kidding me. And now I'm standing here confused as hell, and he just says, come on, follow me, and I'm not gonna say no to a man with an assault rifle. And we walk up to the door, and now I see probably a dozen or so cops, about half in full tactical gear, ballistic vests and helmets and shit, and I'm freaking out. And he tells one of the other cops to grab the door, but I think he's telling me to. So I'm like, yes sir, and he says, no you, and we go in, and there's some guy handcuffed, face against a wall with a cop behind him, and the cop escorting me kinda says to me and another cop, man, we were joking around saying he's probably waiting around for some Chinese food, and in we are gonna come, but he actually fucking was. This is great. And he walks me up to this girl, I'm assuming his girlfriend or something, and she pays for it, and I got an okay tip for it, maybe like $2 or $3, pretty standard considering the situation. And yeah, that's the story on how I delivered Chinese food during a drug bust. Not a delivery driver anymore, but I was last summer. Once, I showed up at a guy's house with his food. It was nighttime, and was going to be my final delivery that day, so I wanted to just get it over with. When the guy opens the door, he thanks me for the food, then makes a joke about how he could just slam the door and not pay for the stuff. He laughed, and I really wasn't in the mood for that joke. I got it all the time, so I pretended to find it funny and put on a dead laugh for him. He pulls out his wallet and starts counting the money, and then makes a comment about how he lives alone. That's a weird comment to make to your delivery driver, but I didn't want to get murdered, so I just said and waited for the money. After he hands me the money, he starts telling me a story about how his mom died and left him money, but his sisters are trying to sue him for his share. I had absolutely no idea what to say to that. For the next 5 minutes, he talks all about his family problems and stresses in life. At this point, I still haven't responded to his story. Once he finishes one of his comments, he says, hey, I'm sorry, you're not my therapist. I shouldn't just spill all this onto you. I laughed and said it was fine, but then he thanked me for listening and said that I made him feel better. He handed me another $2 as a tip, thanked me again, then shut the door. When I went back to work to cash out for the night, my boss was pissed because I stayed and didn't just leave him to come back. In hindsight, I did have no business staying there to listen, but it proved to be one of my most interesting deliveries. I'm not a delivery driver, but some weird shit happened when a guy I worked with asked another coworker if he could pick up and deliver a large gas bottle for him to his house. The guy didn't have a driving license, never has, so the other coworker I mentioned asked me if I'd help him deliver it, because it's a heavy bottle and the guy lives in the middle of a shady scheme. When I say shady scheme, it's nothing mental. It's just an area with a poor rep, and it looks run down, but we are in the Highlands of Scotland, so I'm not talking about anything over the top. Anyway, we finished work, and for whatever reason, The guy receiving the gas bottle, let's call him John, wasn't at work, so me and the co-worker, we'll call Andy, got into Andy's car and drove to pick up John's bottle. We arrived in a car park somewhat near his flat and took it in turns to spin the bottle on its base until we got to John's house. He came to the door and was acting sketchy as fuck, like really nervous and jittery. He lives alone, as we were led to believe, so I was a bit weirded out by his reaction, but whatever. We got the bottle into his house. He wanted it in the cupboard under his stairs. Done. Andy is a great music lover and noticed lots of framed /TC CDs and vinyls on the walls. This started a conversation which took us on a bit of a house tour, showing the majority of his collection. He began touring us through his kitchen, dining room and hallway, showing all these different bits of memorabilia from various bands he liked growing up. He reluctantly swung the door to his living room open and dashed inside. I was behind Andy and not really interested, just nodding along, being polite and seeming like I was interested. Now, Andy swears to God he got a look at what John was doing when he charged down the hall and into his living room as we were walking towards the room. He swears he saw him throw a male blow-up satchel wearing clothes over and behind the couch. Then the loud clattering I heard was him kicking a mannequin dummy out of a single chair just beside the couch where the doll was. I was oblivious of this, but Andy had a stupid grin on his face until John ushered us out a few minutes later without letting us see the framed stuff on the side of the room the doll and mannequin were allegedly on. I did however note there were 3 cups on the small living room table, but I didn't think much of it until after Andy filled me in on what he saw. It's just weird as hell. The guy, John, has been single and living alone for a long time and isn't much liked because he's got a chip on his shoulder, but I didn't have any issues with him personally, so I took him at face value. He got sacked for some stupid shit a few months later, but 4 years afterwards, at work, me and Andy would speculate exactly what he was doing with his doll and the mannequin. Super late, but it's a good one. One time a black Suburban pulled in behind me while I was doing a delivery, and out pops an undercover cop. Had a rot in the back and asked if I was doing and if I had drugs in the car. Well, no, why hesitate? I was in a hurry, so I just said fine, do what you want, because you're gonna do it anyway. About 3 days ago some police had pulled me over for fishtailing in the rain. They basically were convinced that I had drugs in the car, but it was bullshit. Okay, fine. Just do what you want. I'm in a hurry and you're gonna do what you want anyway, so just search the car. Mind you, I was driving a blue 91 Miata, so it's not like it would take long to search it. You know nobody delivers to this neighborhood, right? About 2 weeks ago we found a pizza delivery boy tied up and naked in the basement. Fast forward about 3 months and I'm waiting for someone to come unlock the main door of an apartment building, and a group of 5 others show up waiting to get let in as well. Yeah, no, back in the day we would have jumped yo as a ha, we all had a good laugh about. You'll hear about over in Oak. Found a guy tied up in the basement. That was, forget his name, man, what a fucking dumbass, that's some stupid shit. The others shake their head in agreement. So yeah, from police harassment that ends in me befriending the friends of the guy who got robbed. A couple years ago I took a delivery to a pretty normal looking house. Knocked on the door and the first thing I noticed was a giant swastika tattoo on the guy's left forearm. Told me he had to go find his wallet, but I could wait inside because it was cold out. So I reluctantly step inside and see the wall-sized swastika flag hung up and a bunch of needles and beer on his kitchen table. The guy came back pretty quick with exact change and said he didn't have enough for a tip, so he gave me a beer instead. Getting a beer as a tip wasn't really that uncommon. I would always just take them and throw them away, so I didn't have to sit there and awkwardly decline. Anyways, I started walking back to my car and felt my hand was a little wet. When I got in my car I looked at the beer can and noticed there was a small, needle-sized puncture in the top of the can. I drove straight to a gas station, threw it away, and washed my hands till a little skin came off. We had another guy that ordered regularly that was pretty weird. He was a hoarder, also not as uncommon as you might think, and his apartment was faking trash. He would always answer the door wearing a bathrobe, a tinfoil halo, and when he went to pay you, he would pull out an orange prescription bottle that somehow always had a fat roll of 20s in it. So this isn't my story, but a pair of cowhawkers that I had that were brothers. This happened in upstate Minnesota during the mid-80s when the older brother was 15 and the younger brother was 11. One morning, my cowhawker's mother went into the older brother's room and asked him to do the paper route for his younger brother because his younger brother was injured playing baseball the day before. The older brother reluctantly agreed, so he hopped on his brother's bike, put on his helmet, and started the route. He saw a strange man following him, but thought nothing of it until eventually the man came behind a house with a hockey mask and attacked the older brother, knocked him off the bike, and got close to his face, then just ran away. The older brother biked home, told his mom what happened, and then called the police. They never caught the assailant, but they thought nothing of it. Fast forward to when the younger brother is in college. The FBI come to the dorm where the younger brother lives, and he is obviously freaked out. The officers wanted to ask him what happened when he was 11 because they believed that the person who kidnapped Jacob Wetterling was the same assailant who assaulted his older brother. The Jacob Wetterling case happened after this happened, so this was before people were really trying to find this person. The younger brother explained the situation to the officers to help the cause in finding the assailant, and nothing else came of it. So to connect it all together, if his brother did not hurt himself during baseball, he would have gone and done his paper route. The Jacob Wetterling kidnapper would have been interested in the younger brother and would have kidnapped him and potentially killed him. So in essence, the older brother saved his younger brother's life in a complete accident. Oh, many years back, and I'm probably forgetting details, but it was a cold snowy Michigan night where I delivered some pizza to this guy's condo. He answered the door nicely enough, but it should have been a good warning when he was just wearing just a Caesar's Palace bathrobe that wasn't entirely closed. Anyway, he asks me to come inside while he gets the money. Should have been warning #2 for me, but ignorance prevails. Walks away for a moment, comes back and starts asking me what I'm doing / studying in school, then proceeds to pitch me ideas of his that he wants to invent because I stupidly said I was studying engineering. As I look around the room, I see a revolver sitting on the table. The guy sees me and goes, "Oh, that thing. Don't worry about that." I was way too ignorant when younger and was trying to be nice, but he kept me there without paying for like 45 minutes until I was like, they expect me back in the shop and I need to get back. Eventually he did pay and I got out ta there. I never delivered to his place again. I don't know if he ordered from our shop again, but it was just a really weird experience, especially for a 21-year-old. My own safety was never on my stupid young mind. But hey, I also delivered pizza to Michael Phelps once too. Last order of the night and he only had $100. I had basically cashed out before this, so most definitely didn't have change for that, but figured I'd be nice, and I walked to the gas station 1/2 block away to get change. Got like a $10 tip, which wasn't bad. Man answered the door with only, and I mean only, underwear. And it's not like he's nice and fit and in shape. This is an old, bald, fat, 50-plus-year-old man, and I had to stay at this faker's house for at least 15 minutes. I get inside, and I give him the total. On the receipt says cash, which he told the store. As I tell him it's cash, he tells me, "Oh, I don't have cash." So I have to go grab my phone, call my boss, and get everything straightened out so we can get a charge on his card so he can pay for the food. Takes 10 minutes and my boss wants to speak to him. I hand him my phone and he goes and sits on his couch and talks for a good 5 minutes to my boss while I'm standing there awkwardly. Also, I'm pretty sure this guy piss pants a little bit, but I'm not trying to look and make sure. I'm just staring at the ceiling. Yeah, we don't send any girl drivers there for obvious reasons. We like sending our co-worker. We'll call him Charlie because the dude requests it, and he does things like accidentally dropping the receipt, so he has to pick it up. Charlie doesn't mind because when he does go, the guy gives a pretty decent sized tip. Bonus, we have a lady who orders the weirdest thing. So she orders a small pizza with these instructions: just uncooked dough in the box, with sausage bits on the side in a container, no sauce or cooking, except for the sausage. Cook half the sausage, and then add some pepperoni. She also specifies the amount, like 12g of sausage and 16g of pepperoni, and she lives like just inside of the limit of how far we can deliver. And she tips like 0.50 cents. I'm pretty sure we don't deliver to her anymore, but when we did, I didn't hesitate to take my sweetest time to get there. I have so damn many stories, but the best one has to be the short Latino man at the trailer park. It's like 6 o'clock, and I'm delivering to a trailer park. As I'm going to the trailer I pass this short Latino man, maybe 4 feet 10. I end up missing the trailer a couple times due to numbers not being visible on the trailers. Eventually I arrived. I get out of the car and see the Latino man coming my way. My delivery boy instincts tell me it was his pizza, but I decide to start walking to the trailer door. Maybe his wife or something will be paying for it. I'm walking towards the door, hot bag full of pizzas clearly visible. Latino man starts yelling at me. "Are you faking my wife?" I start looking around like what? He is clearly upset and starts charging at me, yelling over and over again, "Are you faking my wife?" I stop and just look at the hot bag. UHH, did you order a pizza? I say. He pulls out a gun and points it at me and yells one more time, "Are you faking my wife?" At this point, I start walking back to my car. He gets next to me and says, "Oh, are you the pizza guy?" I say yeah, and I'm not here to fuck your wife. We walk over to his door and he says hold on and shuts the door. I'm assuming he's getting money for the pizza. He comes back, but naked with exact change and 2 Coronas. Insist that I stay and drink a beer with him. After turning his offer down numerous times, he eventually gives me a 6-pack of Corona for a tip, even after I explained to him multiple times that I wasn't legally old enough to drink and still had a good 7-hour shift ahead of me. I was 19 at the time. I've had tons of weird ones, but this is for sure top of the list. Alright, finally something I can reply to. When I worked at a pizza place at nights, to play for school, there was a tale of a man everyone called the Russian. Everyone would say that he was always creepy and would scare them. So on my 3rd night working there, the call came in 2 minutes before close that I would need to deliver to him. Naturally the pizza place would be closed when I got back, and the boss paid me my delivery fee and my daily wages. I was pretty much paid under the table, since it was a temporary job covering for one of my friends for about 3 months. So, I drove to what seemed like a nice neighborhood on the edge of the industrial side of town, and parked in the driveway as I would usually do for ease. I got out of the car with pizza in hand, and rang the doorbell. He immediately came to the door and I could hear in the background what only sounded like a Halloween music track with screams and all. He had the most stern look on his face, took his food. He didn't pay, since he had some kind of arrangement with my boss, where he paid month by month, and gave me my $2 tip. As I left I said goodnight, at which point he must have realized where I parked, and was not happy about it. He closed the door as I walked toward my Jeep. As I got ready to get in the Jeep, he ran out of the house screaming in Russian, and approached me in my Jeep, and screamed at me to never park in his driveway again. He then sat in front of my Jeep watching me pull out of the driveway, and followed me onto the street as I pulled away. He must have watched me until I disappeared from sight, because I could see him in my review the entire length of the street. Scariest person I ever delivered to, and pretty bad tipper. $2 to put up with his bullshit once a week for 3 months. No thanks. I may be late to the party here, but it's a doozy. I pull up at the delivery address and immediately notice that the customer is staring at me through a window right near his front door. I grab the pizzas and make my way to the door when he yells out at me to come to the window. I walk over and see this dude lying in bed, completely topless, and I'm just assuming naked as well. He was overweight, hairy, and sweaty with one of the worst mullets I've ever seen. He asked me to hand him the pizza through the window. Now the window wasn't a wide open hole in the side of the wall. He had a fly screen that he'd scratched away at with his talon-like nails to create an opening, presumably for this sort of situation. As I get closer to the room, I get a better look at the den of horrors. Piles of dirty plates all over the room. The wall is covered in posters of topless women and anime characters. stacks of Bourne mags and DVDs everywhere, with a few board games added for good measure. The thing that stuck out to me was the smell. Old stale cum and sweat with a heavy dose of desperation and misery. Gave the guy his pizza and booked it out of there, noting the address to avoid it again on future deliveries. There was a neighborhood we delivered to where you had to go down little side streets and let yourself into people's back gates to get to their door, so that you could knock. New people would usually call the person before entering the yard, but after years of "why are you calling, just come in," I would just open the gate and let myself into their backyards. Then one day I entered the backyard and there were like 20 dudes standing around in a circle, and one chick who was much less clothed than everyone else. There was also a video camera on a tripod. They were all dressed in alternative clothes. They were all really nice and reassuring. I'm female, and it was pretty weird, but I assured them that I was less scared of them messing with me than the usual frat boy that I delivered to in this neighborhood. Then they asked if I wanted to stay, and I said thanks but no thanks. Also one time a guy asked if I wanted heroin, and his girlfriend yelled at him, then they tipped me $9 after I was like, what the fuck, no. Oh, and one time I delivered to a hotel where they were having the adult Special Olympics, and a group of guys who were waiting for me to bring their pizza followed me into the elevator and upstairs, since I had to bring the pizza to the room where their chaperone was so she could pay. They were super excited and clapped the whole time. Oh, and one time I got to the delivery address and it appeared to be a crack house, and a nice old black lady yelled at me from across the street, "Oh no baby, you don't want to go knocking there. Get back in that car and go." Oh, and one time I was driving slowly through the bottom looking for an address that ended up being fake, and a black guy yelled at me. I got that hard. I thought he wanted to fuck, but my shady boyfriend who I had brought with me for protection said that no, he wanted to sell us crack. These last two happened when my boss forced me to try to deliver out of our area to a very sketchy part of town. Thanks Dick. I pulled up to a trailer with their order, and when the customer answered the door in his underwear with a girl in a blanket on the couch, I knew something was up. I'd interrupted people's intercourse with pizza before, so I figured I'd make it quick, but they asked me inside. I really do not want to go inside, but he insists. I was wondering if you could do us a huge favor, he starts. See, it's my girl's birthday and I wanna do something really special for her. So I was wondering if you'd sleep with her. I'd never actually been propositioned on the job before. I'd been flashed and, as I have already stated, delivered to people too busy having sex to answer the door, but this was new and awkward. I said I was very sorry, but we were really busy, complete lie, and that I had to get back to the store, and he got pretty ASCII. He asked if I didn't find her attractive. I did asked if I preferred people of my own gender, and that if I did he would join. I don't. But I insisted that I really could not have sex with his girlfriend at this juncture. I have a policy about putting my genitals and slash around people I don't know in sketchy trailers while I'm on the job. He thanked me, tipped me $5, and let me leave. But not without asking if I was really sure as I left. I never found out if this had happened to anyone else at that store. I don't work there anymore and never went back to that address while I was there. I feel bad for ruining her birthday, but I spent that $5 on snack cakes and got a funny story out of it, so I guess it turned out okay. Not really a delivery story, but it has to do with ordering food, so why not? There are 1000 pizza delivery posts. So here it is. A buddy and I decided to take some acid one day. He had mentioned having some weed at his place, and I had wanted to eat something. So we both dropped Lucy and went our separate ways, agreeing to rendezvous back at my place when we were done. I couldn't decide what I wanted to eat, so I took a little time deciding. I finally landed on going to Sonic, so I could get a slush too. I pulled in, rolled down my window, and pushed the little red button, then waited patiently. After about 15 seconds, I realize everyone there is staring at me. People eating outside, people in their cars, people that worked there. I kind of shrugged it off as the Sonic guy chimes in over the speaker. "Welcome to Sonic, may I take your order, please?" I said. "Oh, yeah. Can I get a supersonic cheeseburger, no pickles, with tots and a Powerade slush?" He responds, "Sir, I can't understand you." I was kind of taken aback, and when I looked up everyone was still staring at me. The acid was definitely kicking in now. I felt like I was in a movie or something. I slowly repeated my order to the Sonic guy, again, in plain English, only to have him say, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I just can't understand you." My heart rate rises a little, and again I look up, to see everyone still staring at me. Some even appear to be slightly angry. I look back at the little speaker box and again repeat my order. This time, when he told me he couldn't understand me, he added, "Maybe if you turned your music down a little, I could understand you better, sir." I looked at my radio, and it was blaring out slightly stupid as loud as it could go. I quickly realized what all the looks were for, and why someone speaking the same language as me couldn't understand me. I just turned it down, and started laughing hysterically for like 10 minutes. They must have all thought I was crazy, which is funny, because minutes earlier I thought they were all crazy. If they only knew. I met up with my friend back at my place, after I got my food, told him the story, while we were smoking out, and we got a good laugh out of it, watched Hitchhiker's Guide, and had a grand old time. Funny stuff. Acid. Alright, 6.5 years of delivery in 3 cities. Here are the highlights. Deliver to a regular. He's a small Jewish guy. Window is up to just the screen next to the door, and he is destruction pounding a large woman from missionary, while only wearing a French blue dress shirt and socks. I rang the doorbell and he hopped up, and stumbled into righty witties, and met me all out of breath and glasses askance. He still had a rock hard giant dad dick pushing the limits of his undies. Tip 7. Wiener was probably even more substantial than the tip tbh. Continued to be a repeat customer, and was a cool dude with a penchant for buggery. Pulled up to a trailer and a guy shorted me $1.57. He was a huge yard hard black dude, and when I told him he was short he threatened to kill me on the spot. His wife, I guess, inside told him to calm down, and he said he'd do her next. Somehow, having been stiffed several times that day, I told him it was cool, I'd just blacklist him, and think about calling the cops when I got back. He mean mugged the shit out of me, and I was scared for opening my full mouth. I'm a big dude, but this dude was like Debo with a sheety beard. He asked if I wanted some, and I said no, thank you, and walked a few steps to my car. I put it in reverse, and yelled out the window to him, that I might come back later, and throw a brick through his car window, and just floored it. I hope it made him mildly uncomfortable for the rest of the evening. I'm glad he didn't just beat the brakes off of me. Went to a nice corner lot in a swell neighborhood. Pulled up and there was a boat on a trailer. Maybe best considered a sport boat. It was big and looked new. Delivered the pizza, after waiting at the door for like 10 minutes knocking and ringing. A sweet drunk mom came and handed me $100 on a $37.XX order of 2 extra large loaded pizzas. I told her I hoped I had changed, and she said to give her $5 back. I said, "Hey, that's amazing, thank you." She told me her husband was sheet-faced with his friends celebrating his new expensive boat, and that he said I could keep the whole $100, but she just couldn't let herself give me a tip like that. I was okay, but the more I thought about it, the more weirdly twisted the logic seemed. I thanked her again, and went back to the shop both excited and a little bewildered at the exchange. Still, win. I got more, but I'm on my phone. Beatings, drugs, group melee, and drivers getting booted from burn wards. Worked for the post office once, about 6 years ago, delivering mail. I was just out of junior college, and working before I entered med school. Anyways, there was this one house with that loner man. He was probably autistic, or had a paranoid/schizoid personality disorder. I don't judge him, in his late 30s, but I always noticed him watching me through the window. I don't mean standing in the middle of the window and blankly staring at me, but always pushing his curtains a tad bit, and watching me go down the street. I started paying attention to it after a few weeks working, and bet to myself which window it would be next time. He did that all the time, every day, for 3 months. The days I had mail delivered to him, he always opened the door and hastily closed the door, one time almost catching my fingers. One day I entered his garden and he opened his door like usual, but his dog got out. This lovely dog comes to me and starts running in circles around me looking for a pet. I straight up said, "What a lovely dog you have. Love this breed, Icelandic sheepdog," and look at the guy. He looked furious. He wanted to stab me with his eyes and shouted at his dog to get inside, eventually dragging the dog inside. I just stood there speechless with his mail in my one hand. He came back out, grabbed his mail out of my hand, turned around on the spot, and slammed the door. In no particular order. 1. In high school once a semester they would have a pizza week, where each day they would serve pizza from a different pizza place, school pizza, or frozen pizza brand. Where I worked needed extra help those days and paid doubled. So my sister called me in sick. I also delivered the pizza to the school, and each time the principal would be in the kitchen to receive the pizza. Every single time he asked me if I used to go there, and each time I told him I each graduated the previous year. 2. Once delivered to one of the fanciest houses in town on Christmas Eve. They were having an Xmas party and the owner was dressed as Santa. He was a natural ringer, large belly, real white beard, and seemed very jolly. He was totally in Calandra and had me sit on his lap in front of his 20 to 30 family members and did the whole song and dance as if I were a small child seeing Santa for the first time. Gave me a $40 tip and bag of candy for being a good sport. 3. Delivered a pepperoni pizza to obvious meth addicts. They wanted a refund because they thought it had no pepperoni on it. I explained that our restaurant puts the pepperoni under the cheese. They didn't believe me, so I pulled the cheese up with one of the plastic forks. They then claimed I tricked them and snuck it under there while they weren't looking. They got hostile, so I just gave them their money back. Next day the cops come to work asking for the delivery driver that worked the previous night. Turns out they burned the whole apartment building down while cooking meth, and they wanted to know what I had seen while I was there. Edit. 4. I didn't really think of this as weird because it happened once a week for 3 years of my life, but others might think it's weird. Once a week on Monday, beat the clock deal. Large pizza was the price of the time the order was taken starting at 5:00 p.m. The same elderly couple would order a large beef for delivery at exactly 5 p.m. They were obviously very poor and very frail. They would have me come into their home, serve their pizza to them each 2 pieces on their TV trays while they sat in their recliners, and put the leftovers away in Tupperware. They then had me put a movie in their video cassette recorder and start it for them. Occasionally they would ask me to do something little like change a light bulb. Each time they gave me $1 as a tip. I was a terrible person at the time and couldn't see how sweet this was or the things I could have done to help them. At first I hated it as it was the busiest single time for delivery every week. Then it just became part of life, but I never grew to like it. I always liked to think I could go back and do more than just what they asked of me, but I know there is no alternate reality of my life where that happens. It just wouldn't have been me if it did change. I live near a fairly small airport that is often used to fly important people in and out of the area. My job does catering on the side, and we deliver at least once a week to the airport. Sometimes it's lunch for employees, other times it's a fancy sheet for said important people. Anyway, I'm sent to deliver 4 large pizzas one day. We can make anything from breakfast sandwiches to caviar plates, and everything in between, and figured it was for the staff. When I got there, everyone was bustling around all excitedly, and I was just left standing there with these faking pizzas like an asshole for like 15 minutes. I hear some female employees squealing, "He's here, he's here," who walks into the back lounge area, but kid faking rock. I couldn't believe it. I just continued to stand there like an asshole. He said, "Thanks for the pizza, are you a fan?" I must have stammered out a yes, because he took the pizza, put the pieces from one of them on a tray, signed the box, and handed it to me. I said thanks, and went on my way, certain I had imagined it. Turns out my managers had no idea, and I learned they have catered for some other famous people, apparently including Katy Perry. Why these people are in my area is beyond me, but it was a pretty awesome Tuesday afternoon at work. We have the box sitting out at work still. I kinda wanted to keep it. I used to deliver for a well-known and cheaty national chain. The weirdest I remember was probably a delivery to West Philly. I didn't actually make the delivery, but I did take the phone order and the subsequent call back from the customer. She ordered a large pizza with everything and made a point of clarifying that she really meant everything, because last time we ordered a pizza with everything, it came without anchovies, and we want anchovies. This made sense, because when people ordered everything, the standard was to give them the extravaganza, which had all the standard toppings, but didn't include specialty toppings like anchovies and jalapenos. So I rang her up for an extravaganza with anchovies, made it, and sent it on its way. About 45 minutes later she calls back, furious. I ordered a pizza with anchovies on it, and instead of anchovies, you put these little fish on it. And I'm allergic to fish, so now my face is getting all swollen. I was baffled. I explained that the little fish were anchovies, and that if she didn't mean, what was she referring to when she said she wanted anchovies? Those little black rings with the red thing in the middle. My best guess was black olives, with pimentos? Although I've only ever seen pimentos in green olives. We had to send the pizza back. The driver claimed her head was swollen like a basketball. 1 of 3. 1. I'm standing outside the house I think I'm delivering to. The number is off by 2 and doesn't seem to exist, but it's. Even so I assume I'm at least on the right side of the road. I call, and the dude answers and tells me he's coming. I hear someone behind me yell, "Is that my neighbor's sandwich? Let me spit in it." Dude is coming out of a dark, condemned looking house. Says, "I'm kidding." I figure out it is his. Ask me point if I can break $100. No. He tells me he needs to go inside to get the money, but the power is out. He asks me if I want to come in. I decline. He comes back later and pays, no tip. Whatever, still alive too. Old dude comes out in a wife beater and boxers and asks me if I want some marijuana, emphasis on the H. It's very good. I grow it myself. Tell him I'm good and just want to finish my shift. He looks disappointed, pays, no tip, and I go. 3. College brothers tell me to come in to get my tip. Tell me I have to take shots. This is my last delivery, whatever. Take like 4 shots. Get $20. Come back. Puke in the bathroom. Cash out. I work in a school during the week, but on weekends I drive delivery for a place that does pizza and subs and stuff. I get an order going out to an address that, from familiarity with the area, I know is an office building. But there isn't an office number on the order, just the building number. Furthermore, the name on the order is John Doe, written exactly like that. And it's a cash order, meaning they plan on paying me when I arrive, and I need to carry change for $20 on me. Yeah, I know. Super legit, right? But the boss tells me to go, so I do. I show up at the office building, and the building is being renovated. Nobody's working in the offices because of the renovations, and the only staff on hand are construction workers and security. I have the guy's number, so I try to call him up, but the line is disconnected. Great. So I walk through this half torn apart building, wondering if I'm about to become the first victim in some horror movie, when I find the security desk. So I talk to the officer and I say that I have an order for John Doe, but there's no office number. As it turns out, the security guard had ordered the sandwich, and his name was actually John Doe, and he had put in the wrong phone number in the online app, and didn't even notice it when he did so. I got a decent tip out of that, but it didn't really make up for the 10 or so minutes of a horror movie I lived through there. Disclaimer: this is more terrifying than weird. So normally I just browse Reddit, but I finally decided that I should chime into a post for once. Technically I'm a delivery girl for a title and escrow company. If you don't know what that is, feel free to look it up. To set some context, I just recently moved from a small town of 30,000 to a city of over 1 million for school. Getting a delivery job was a new and exciting experience for me, because I didn't know the city very well, but it was a good way to explore it. For my job I deliver large checks and documents to other businesses and banks. I make my own hours, and get to dress pretty casually, so overall it's a pretty good deal. So on this day in particular I was almost done with my runs and I only had one more left to go, and I debated on leaving the documents I had to deliver for the afternoon runner, but no, I decided I wanted the miles, so I made the 20-minute drive to the downtown area to deliver the package to a huge tower. I was reluctant to pay the parking garage fee of $2, so I drove up the street a little ways to park at a meter. As I get out of the car and start walking down the street to get to the building, I remembered that I forgot to pay the meter, so I go back up to put some change in, and while I'm doing this, a strange red car pulls up in front of mine, and a really tall black male and large black female get out of the car and walk up to me. Instantly a wave of fear washed over me. They started asking if they could borrow my phone, and I obviously knew that it was a scam. I said, "No, you have a phone in your hand, you don't need mine," and quickly started walking down the street to get away from them. Thankfully they hop back in their car and drive away. As I'm walking down the street, feeling terrified, I call the last person that I called on my phone, which just happened to be my work. I just had a gut feeling that I should tell someone, which was the greatest decision I could have made, besides running back to my car. Still on the phone, as I'm walking down the street, the same car pulls around the corner and two girls jump out and start chasing me, so I start sprinting back to my car, the fastest I have ever ran. I'm unlocking my car the whole way there and screaming into the phone that they are chasing me. I get in the car and I'm trying to start it while they catch up to me and start trying to get me out of the car by yanking on my hair and punching me profusely. They were yelling at me, "Beach, give us the faking keys, beach, I will faking kill you," and many other horrible things. I'm jamming the key into the ignition trying to get it in, the whole time thinking, what if they have a knife or even a gun? I just got this car 3 days prior, and I was not going to let these lowlifes just take it from me. I finally get the car started and slam on the gas pedal, getting the fuck out of there, slamming the open driver side door as I'm speeding away. I'm thinking, what if they chase me? So I'm prepared for a high-speed chase and turn the corner like a madman, and they just keep going straight, so I lost them. This whole time my work hears me screaming, and they call the cops, who meet me a few blocks away where I thought the people wouldn't be able to find me. I spent an hour with the cops giving them all the info that I knew and describing everything. They found a video camera in a building nearby and tried to get the tape. A few days later they do, and it was exactly how I had described it. To further crazy this story, later that day the people were actually successful in stealing an old woman's car and had a huge high-speed chase with the cops, and they eventually crashed the car and all had to go to the hospital and went to jail. I think yay, justice is served for those scumbags. Well, it turns out that the two girl scumbags who chased me were minors and were released. Of course, after this my mom bought me 2 tasers, a whistle, and 2 pepper sprays. My boyfriend also got me a knife and pepper spray too. To make this even crazier, a few weeks later my friend who lives back in my hometown tells me this crazy story. Apparently her aunt that lives in the city that I live in now lives up north, which is the bad part of the city, had a drive-by shooting happen at her neighbor's house across from her. 2 girls and a guy were shot, and the 2 girls were both shot multiple times in the legs. What do you know? They were the 2 girls involved in my incident. Is it bad that I wish the bullets would have hit somewhere else? They've caused so much anxiety in my life, but honestly, I feel worse for them, that their whole life will be consumed by gang violence, and that they didn't get to choose their upbringing. I just want whoever is reading this to take from this that when this happened to me, it was 10 AM on a well-lit street. Always be prepared and cautious of your surroundings, because I never expected this to happen to me. A couple years ago I delivered to a house that sat about 5 feet apart from its neighbor. It was around Christmas time. It was late and dark. When I walked up to the house, the neighbor's window caught my eye because the blind was up and the living room was lit. When I looked in, I couldn't believe my eyes. A woman and her son, who I would guess was about 5, were but naked, decorating their Christmas tree. I quickly glanced back at the house I was delivering to because I didn't want them to see me look and think I was creeping. I delivered the pizza and went back to my car. I was shocked and laughed to myself and started to question if I saw correctly. It's one thing to walk around with your young child naked in your own living room, but just past dinner time with your blinds open is another thing. When I got back to my pizza shop, my friend who I was going to hang with after work was waiting for me. I clocked out of work shortly after and explained to him what I saw. He couldn't believe it either. Since the house was close, we decided that he should walk by the house himself and take a quick glance to see if I really saw what I did. So I dropped him off at the end of the block and waited on the other side. Mind you, the sidewalk to the house is only about 5 feet in this part of town because it's close to the train station. Once he got to my car and hopped in, he said, "Yup, you saw correct," and we drove off laughing, thinking that's the strangest thing we'd ever seen. Delivery boy in Springfield. A kid took a really long time to get the door unlocked, much less open the door. I'm very bad at assuming ages and genders, but the kid wasn't a baby and could walk, but I'm sure it still needed some sort of diaper or something, because it smelled horrible and had a bib covered in food attached to its clothing. The inside was lit by dull light bulbs, only filling small places at once. After I stared at the kid and used some complimentary napkins to wipe something off its eye, I called in. She, the nother, wasn't visible until completely standing and around this sharp corner of her house, and when she was, I picked up that she was holding a knife. No blood or anything, still kinda faked me up. I told her the total was $12.98 instead of paying. She began to talk to me while her child desperately wanted her attention for something. It tugged on her shirt and stomped its feet. The lady herself looked pretty greasy and had shaky hands. I handed her the pizza. She full force stuck the knife in the box and deliberately reached past the pizza box and knife, past my hand, and pushed a 10 inside of my shirt. At $10. Total was $13. I didn't care because she's obviously faking armed. I wasn't trying to lose my life over $3. I just gave her more napkins, made her sign something, gave her a seat, and faked off while staring at that damn knife. Asked an adult to call Child Protective Services and paid for the missing money. Got yelled at for not requesting full payment. Quit because of it. I hope the lady and her kid got some help.